All right, and we're back to part two. So, welcome. Oh, I didn't mention part two for the spells. Let's hit this real quick. For this, it comes with a book. So, this book is actually kind of heavy. It comes with a book. So, if you are interested in that, go for it. Each thing has a nice color picture, which is kind of rare because I know that like some artists like don't want their artwork stolen and shit, and they are real protective about that. So it comes with this. I haven't cracked it open and stuff like that. I'm not really Druid, pagan, Wiccan, or anything like that. So I mean, it's not like I'm gonna say fuck it and like not read it, but it's not on my to-do list. I buy decks to connect with decks. So, yeah. But it has like most books with the guidebooks has some um, deck spreads and social because it's made by Llewellyn and just different things. So if you're into magic, casting circles, things like that, then you'll like this. I think you'll like this. This might be one of those beginner books for that kind of stuff. So, yeah, go with that. So, there's that. There's the Spellcasters Tarot. Oh, it's by Melanie Marquis. I think she has several books, I guess. And they are mentioned in the guidebook, or you can just look her up. But this is what it looks like. That's her name right there. The illustrator's down here. Now, on to the second one. So, book club. I might make this video first, depending on how long it is. Upload it first. Book club. So, for March, I was supposed to read 2 books. But y'all, the first one was Diary of a Death Doula, 25 Lessons the Dying Teaches About the Afterlife by Deborah Diamond, PhD. And then the second one I was supposed to read was Codependence, The Dance of Wounded Souls, A Cosmic Perspective of Codependence in the Human Condition by Robert Burney. However, I did not read this in March. So let's just get into this. So essentially, this book is about the experiences of a death doula. She was once in like corporate America and then decided to do some other stuff with death doula work. Her mother ended up needing to be in hospice, I think, and so from what I like remember, and so she decided, because she was so not enamored, but she was really grateful at the help that her mother received at the end of her life, that she decided to be a volunteer. And so this book kind of is her volunteering and the lessons that she has. Now, she is a medium, and so she talks about that in here, and her experiences, because the way she volunteers is she goes into the place, she looks at the roster, she goes to different rooms and stuff like that, and she has these experiences with people, both the people that are in hospice. And something that she notes in hospice is that not everybody who's in hospice is like just brain dead, so to speak. Like there's a connotation when people say hospice that people aren't able to do anything. And some of the first people that you're introduced to in this actually talk, they walk, they have terminal illnesses where they really don't have that long. And so this book does help to dispel like those ideas that people think about hospice as an environment and as a thought, like, do we need hospice? I think we do. I think we need hospice. I think we need nursing homes. I'm not somebody who's opposed to that, but I know that people who are opposed to that have their reasons. One of the reasons that she notices in this, and she notes it in here because this book is different sections. The first section is her talking about like death from a perspective a cultural perspective and then a medical perspective, and how the two kind of clash, and it does clash a little bit when she tells the stories. But the thing with like hospice and nursing homes is that it is needed. It's a necessary part, I think, for today's society. One of the things I think people are kind of stuck in the past with that, but that's my own personal thought. But with death doula work and death in general and how it is seen is that people are very scared of death. People are very weary of talking about it, almost as if it brings it on. But the truth is, it's like no matter if you talk about it or not, it comes. And so she really advocates for understanding where we have been in terms of death cultures, why some cultures are more open to death than others, what are some of the philosophies, theologies that we have that have seeped into that kind of role, that compartmentalization, that shame of death, that not wanting to discuss it, religion, things like that. It's not like it's a heavy hitting first section, but it does open up a little bit of a discussion for you to engage with about death and the societies that are more open towards death. How do they view it? I would really like to see studies on this, and maybe this is a note for me, so I guess I gotta play this back. What studies show regarding the psychological health of people who do talk about death? That's something that I would be interested in listening to or reading about. So if you're a culture that's very death centric or very death available in terms of you're open to talking about it or you're open to seeing it or witnessing it. I know some cultures like Korean cultures, they don't have the body from what I remember, from what I read. They don't have the body in the service. When they're having the service, they feel very weird about that. But they have a whole culture of like death portraits, which is really interesting. I'm interested in post-mortem stuff, like death portraits where like people take portraits, not necessarily of them like lying in repose and like dead, but it's like a culture from what I read. It's like a headshot or like some sort of shot that is put at the funeral in the place of the person, and it's like not a big thing from what I was reading, but it is a thing. And so I'm interested in post-mortem photography, things like that. I have my own weird fascination with death, and like you guys have known, I've called this place the necropolis several times, and my friend, he's just like, why do you keep talking about this? And it's just like, it's all around you. But it's one of those things where I've had my own issues resolving death, and part of meditation was kind of that journey for me. So I was really interested in this. But the first section talks about her transition into death doula work, how death is seen now in a modern context versus then. There aren't any like studies or anything like that to show any of this. Like I said, I would be interested. But there is this kind of idea that she puts in the book that that medical science and people in the medical profession, not that they like effed up death, but I think scientific, observable kind of things, like it entered into something that was quite ceremonial, ritualistic, not necessarily weighed down by like the mechanics of dying. I think it wasn't weighed down about that. It was more about the holistic of the person, their life, their place in the world, their relation to community, their relation to God, and less about the physical process of dying, the physical process it takes to die, the physical process it takes to help someone continue to live in terms of using medicine, like stuff like that, like is kind of starting with this book. and how the medical profession, in some ways, seeks to exhibit some control over death, because I do think personally that humans do have this battle with death because they're trying to control it. And so she mentions that on a psychological level from the grieving perspective of the people who grieve, and then the medical professions who have this say of what death is, how they determine someone is dead, things like that, this authoritative kind of voice, right? So she discusses that, and then she talks about the spiritual kind of thing and why someone would want to get into this sort of work, what happens when you're a death doula. Hospice has a section of the role of hospice, and she talks about that. She talks about it a lot kinder than I think people who have an absolute fear of the medical system would, and that she's not putting it down, but she's saying that there are some positives and negatives. She is saying that there is a clinical kind of way, methodical way, mechanical way that they deal with death that doesn't always sit right with her, but that she has a certain scope of practice, so to speak, and so she can't go outside of that. She mentions that. But then also there's a scope of practice that medicine doesn't tend to have, and it's the kind that she has, actually, based on being like a medium and things like that. So I like that push-pull kind of thing, because I think people who are very against the medical system have this view that I don't particularly think is totally wrong, of how medicine and medical professionals act regarding things that they can't see, observe, and things like that. But that they do have a role, they do serve a purpose, and to kind of totally disregard that is kind of like, why? Like, there's a holistic experience, and that I feel like one day the spiritual world and the medical world will combine. I always find that the spiritual world is like light years ahead, and then science catches up, but you know. And I do think that people do also misdirect their spirituality to prove certain points and ideologies that they have, and that can be quite manipulative and misleading. So there's a push-pull in it. It's not that hard of a push-pull in this book, but she does mention some of those things. So she talks about her spiritual journey, like I said. These are the first two sections I'm talking about. And then the third section is all of the lessons. So she talks about, this is where you get to like understand kind of the role that she plays, and she kind of she learns about people who are dying because she's a medium, so she's talking to people as they're like dying, but it's a lot of stories, and some of them actually are kind of repetitive. So that would be the one critique of this book, but it's very interesting. So she talks about certain things like people dying, people having the will to die, people transitioning, that the people that are dying, they can sometimes hear you. They are aware. They may not be aware in that they can see or they're talking or they're feeling things, but they are energetically aware of people. They're energetically aware of their family being there. They're energetically aware of being alone, and they have certain experiences of their own that you are not privy to. And someone like her, she's privy to it because she's like a medium. And so she talks to these people who are in hospice. Some of them deal with it better than others. Some of the family members deal with it better than others. So she talks about people who are in denial about hospice and what it is and what it means. People who have unresolved issues that are outside of the person who is in hospice. Like they have unresolved issues with family members regarding dynamics. She talks about that and how those issues come into the hospice setting in not so great ways. It can come in there in a great way if everybody has their shit together, but oftentimes it kind of comes up that people, and this is a lesson, so to speak. She doesn't mention this explicitly as a lesson, but to take care of your own stuff before you, one, get into this kind of work, like a good chunk of it, and take care of your stuff before you kind of like start considering hospice and putting people in hospice and stuff like that, because, or taking on any kind of caregiving role, because it's kind of hard to do that when like you have so many blocks towards death specifically, or just emotional blocks or emotional issues with people that you have to now work with to get together with them to have like this successful experience of hospice. What else? So she talked about the transition period for people, how people, when they die, it's not just a flat, they're gone. It's a process. Like they start leaving and then they may come back and then they start going, and they have their guides, they have family and stuff like that, or they're alone and they're leaving, but it's like, it's in stages. It's like, it's almost like when she was describing it, kind of doing it all in one fell swoop kind of takes a lot of energy, and that is actually something that's mentioned. It takes energy to die. Like it does take energy to die. And so what she kind of gets at when she's listening and speaking with these people is that they're going on journeys and they're going out a little farther each time, and then the last time they just won't come back. And so they're going and they're going and they're going, but they'll come back. They're going and they'll come back. And there's a lot of discussion of the will of the person to die and how they're in control. So like she talks about sometimes when people don't want to die around people, they'll die before their family comes. Like if they can energetically sense like, oh, their family's coming today, they may die before their family gets there because they don't want that. And so it's kind of like that push and pull of the medical profession declaring what death is, and then like the actual person's experience of them dying and what their will is actually saying. It's like the medical will and they're kind of clashing, and you can't see their will because they're generally not responsive, but their will is being displayed. And I felt that was really interesting. There's a bunch of examples of things. She talks about people saying to their family members that they can leave, they can go, and that's another process of psychological for the griever, that they are trying to have some sort of control over death and their experience with this person, but that the person ultimately, she is explaining, has the say of when they go, really. And death, I kind of suspected that death was more than just like the physical body as a transition spiritually. She talks about family of hospice people needing support. That's a big thing. We retain the senses at the end of life. Just taking time to appreciate life is one of the things that also came up. So appreciating life, where you've been, where you're going, things like that. Just don't take life for granted is something that's stressed, even though most of the people in here lived quite full lives, it seemed, but don't take it for granted. Another thing is about the spiritual aspect of crossing over and what that feels like. And so when she's talking to the people that are dying in the process, they're saying that essentially, and this is where it kind of gets repetitive and you kind of like, you're like, did they really say that? But this idea that they the description is just like, and some people with near death experiences like have said, I guess, that the comfort that you feel when you've kind of crossed over is unmatched. Like there's no there's no experience on earth that compares to that openness and that compassion and that love and that unconditional love and that just enlightenment and beaming of consciousness that you feel, that expansiveness that you feel. Like there's nothing on earth like it. And so, you know, that's probably why some people probably cross over, because they're like, fuck it, like I feel great here. And so there is this kind of sense of there's something truly beyond here, and people who go over there, they're not suffering. They know that they're leaving this realm or this way of being, but that they are ever growing, ever expanding their consciousness, ever spiraling, ever moving, ever changing. And there's no real like loss for them. Like there's no discussion of like the people that like are stuck in between limbo and stuff like that, people that like passed but like weren't satisfied, and so, like there's nothing about that. This is quite, everybody went up and everybody was great. So that's something I enjoy. And then the last section was consciousness and the end of life. This is about a year that she did Death Doula work, and that's this year that it covers. But generally, that what she believed wasn't necessarily always challenged. I'm not gonna say that. Like, it was challenging for her to do her scope of practice when she kind of felt like there was experiences that she was having that maybe it helped, particularly because like most of the people, they had a bunch of medicine, and like some of the processes of the people that were dying, they were going through, they were trying to go up, and then people would come in and they would give them medicine, and it would bring them back down. Actually, it would kind of like pull them back down into this physical reality. But I think that it was a good book in terms of trying to get at this idea that there's something outside of it. I don't know if it should have been as long as it was. I actually think it would have suited maybe better to a books, like a series kind of thing, where she hit the points in like a 20-minute video. So I might look and see if she actually has that to discuss it, because I feel like it fits more for that format than a book. It's not that it was a slow read, it's just that because the stories follow the same kind of format, it can get kind of repetitive for somebody who's not interested in Death Doula work. I was interested for a little bit and kind of fell back. But yeah. So I enjoyed it. I would give it a 4 out of 5 for this. So this is my kind of book review and discussion. I think it's a good one. I don't think if you're looking to get into the work of Death Doula and figuring out what it is on a technical sense, the legal bounds and stuff like that, like this is not for you. This is more about the perspective shift that you might undergo dealing with this, and particularly if you're someone who's like psychic, medium person. Some of the things you may actually encounter and some of the questions that you may come away asking through your work. It's no definitive answer to that though, so don't expect that in the book, but yeah. So the other book that I was supposed to read was about codependence, and I am going to say that this is going to be for April now. So I did say in a previous video, y'all, that Deep Nutrition, Why Our Genes Need Traditional Food was going to be book club in May. And the reason why is because this thing is like damn near 500 pages, and like I'm a slow as fuck reader. So this is going to be a 2-monther. So book club for May is this, the Deep Nutrition. And so I'm just going to read that. It's about nutrition and stuff like that, so I don't know how it's going to relate, but I'm interested in somatic releasing of the body, and since I'm in massage therapy school, there's got to be some of you somewhere. But yeah, I was interested in this thick ass book, and we'll talk about it in May. Now for April, I have 2 books. The Codependence book, I'm just interested in it. It seems like a pretty short read. Like, the person who got it, like, must have been going through some shit, because, like, this is not me, this is them. They must have been going through it, child. Like, look at this. So this is going to be an April book. I'm interested in a new series. I'll do more about that later because I have no space on my phone after this video. And then this book, What We Ache For, Creativity and the Unfolding of the Soul by Oriah Mountain Dreamer. She's also the author of The Invitation. So this is what this book looks like. And the new series, it's 2 of them. One is dealing with Neptune, and then one is dealing with womb and chakra and things like that. So it would be more like women-centered and womb-centered and stuff like that. But that's coming later. But these are kind of like leading into that. And so, yeah, this is the book club. So April's book club is, and I guess if you want to like find these and like read them and then like you can discuss in the comments and stuff. These are the 2 for April. So by April's end, I'm not going to guarantee, but we're going to make the challenge and hopefully rise to the occasion. These are the 2 books. And then the last book, that's going to be for May, and there's probably going to be another book with this, but for May, the main book is Deep Nutrition. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. So I'm gonna upload this one first, actually, and then maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, I'll upload this one second, because I started talking about this in this one and people would be quite like, what are you talking about? So all right, let me go ahead and upload this first one, and I will talk to you guys later. See ya.